Excellent. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for the thumbs up, Michael. So I'm Barbara Penner. This is Robin Wilson.
Hello.
And together we are the program directors for the MA Architectural History, which is one of the oldest programs of its kind in the UK. It's certainly one of the best known in the UK and also beyond. What we would like to do today is give you an overview of the course, tell you a bit about its structure, how it works, tell you a bit about our ethos, and approach. We've also invited two current students who very kindly agreed to join us, Sophie and Rodney, and they will introduce themselves after we've done our overview. And so you'll have a chance to hear about their experience. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. So our aim today is really just to try to give you a good sense of the course, to see if it's right for you and it suits your aspirations and future career ambitions. So, moving swiftly along, anyway, welcome to you. That's the most important thing to say. The second point we just wanted to make is that today you'll see me and Robin, and we're the main points of contact for the course, but in fact, to deliver this course depends on a much wider range of history and theory staff. Sorry, I'm just going to admit one joiner there. And so we really depend on a far bigger pool of staff members to help to deliver lectures, seminars, talks, walks, and the optional courses that we'll go on to describe.
Right.
So the other thing perhaps that, okay, so very quickly, we did just want to say that history and theory teaching at the Bartlett goes back to this fellow who you may have heard of, Peter Rayner Banham, who was the first full-time professor of history and theory in the UK. And he was based here at the Bartlett, and I would say really set the Bartlett on a certain course in terms of its history and theory teaching. He was very much focused on the contemporary, but he also really was very directly engaged with contemporary events in architecture, and very sort of passionately engaged in cultural debates. So that's very much an ethos we try to continue. Banham had a teaching assistant and PhD student, Professor Adrian Fordy, who with Mark Swennerton went on to set up this MA course in 1981. And it was unique at the time. So the course has this very long history. Obviously, with each decade, we have tried to refresh it in various ways. We'll describe that a bit in a moment. Sorry, one more admission. But the main thing, or a central plank of this course, has really remained consistent since the beginning, which is that this has never been a course that's just interested in architects as famous individuals, as celebrities. There's always been this effort to really go beyond the production of buildings and to think about the way in which architecture engages the world, and is socially and culturally embedded. I would say that's probably one of the defining features of the course. And so we are always really trying to position architecture within social, ideological, creative, political, material, technological, theoretical, and also urban processes. So I won't say any more about that, but I'll turn over to Robin.
Okay. So in the rest of the presentation, we're going to take you through the course structure and talk a little bit about the individual modules and the different sort of dynamics of the program as it develops across the year. So just to give you an overview, so term one is the time when we do the two core introductory modules, which are modules that everybody takes. And they're divided across critical methodologies, which is a seminar-based, reading-based module that introduces you to different methods of historiography and different theorized histories of architecture and beyond. And Barbara will talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then research and dissemination, which is a module that I've been running for quite some years now, which is a more practical-based module, which is based on visiting experts coming and talking each week, and students being engaged in more practical assignments. And often those assignments are collaborative. So that one is not attached to a reading list. It's really a doing and producing module. And then in term two, we continue the 2 sessions a week contact time with 2 module choices. So students have a choice of 2 of 8 seminar modules. And these again are reading-based modules with seminar, peer review and peer discussion, which lead then to the production of an essay at the end of, or 2 essays, an essay from each seminar at the end of the term and handing in the beginning of the summer term. And then in the final summer term and over the summer period, we have a dissertation module. So that begins in May when we have workshops to begin to present and think about the dissertation topic. And then we allot each student an individual tutor from the list of tutors that you saw on the previous pages. So then that becomes independent study over the summer with about 5 tutorials, a draft marked essay, and then the final submission in the beginning of September.
Great. So just to give you some sense, to give you some a little bit more of a sense of content, I thought I would just share with you the outline for critical methodologies. This is one of the core courses in term 1. And you'll see we sort of run through week by week some very broad histories, methods, theories, subjects of architecture. And the aim really is just to establish a common ground for our students. Our students are very diverse. They come from many disciplines, so art history, architecture, many are trained architects, anthropology, geography, and so on. So we really use this course as a way to provide this lingua franca that we can all refer to. It's a bit of a theoretical toolkit for that first term. I think one of the points that I would make, just in case that last outline looked quite intimidating, we don't expect you to become experts in all of these areas, post-colonialism, biopolitics, whatever. The idea just really is to introduce you to some of the key ideas. So we'll typically, for instance, give you a sample reading from a key text, a key primary text, in this case, on biopolitics from Michel Foucault. And then we'll also pair that with an article from architectural history so that you are able to see how it's applied and how it might be applied. And we usually have quite a lively discussion about how these theories can be brought to bear on architectural and urban subjects. The aim, again, of the course is ultimately to encourage you to write critically, but also self-reflexively about the subjects of architecture and help give you the tools to take a situated position in your essays.
Great. And then just to give you a bit of information about research and dissemination. So the principle of this module is that different forms of research generate different forms of knowledge. And so we run through what could be considered sort of core methodologies of research, such as archival research and oral history. So you can see here some of the team from the Survey of London who help us with the archive search and some of the artifacts that students found this year recently on their searches in the London Metropolitan Archives. You can see some more there, which is the the Oasis Pool in Holborn. We also sort of diversify the methodological range and look at things such as exhibitions. This is a session with Vicky Richardson, recent session in the Royal Academy room at the Royal Academy. These are some of the exhibitions that Vicky has curated at the Venice Biennale on the left and at the Royal Academy recently. We have a session on photography. This is Agnesi Sanvito, a London-based photographer who works both within the kind of idiom of architectural photography, working with architects, but also has her own art practice and works with a gallery. So she talks between those two kind of situations of photography. And we also diversify out. So we have sessions on film and sound, sonic practice. The fellow on the left is Ian Chambers, who's a specialist sound artist. And we have a session on community and consultation. So the pair on the right are Hilary Powell and Dan Edelstein, who work with communities as part of their art practice. So it's this idea that we move from more experimental and propositional modes of research, as well as the core, to sort of generate that interdisciplinary approach to historiography. Great.
Thank you. So, term 2. Again, as we touched on briefly, in term 2, we have this menu of 8 optional modules. And whereas term 1 is really devoted to giving you this overview introduction, term 2 is when you're given the chance to really plunge in and explore in much greater depth a particular area, field, or method. There isn't time to run through each module one by one. There are full descriptions on the website, so please do have a look there. But I hope this list at least begins to give you a sense of the range of modules on offer. And all of these are run by leading experts in their field. To perhaps just help you navigate a bit, we offer several courses that focus on the history of London, the history of global London, and also architecture from the 17th to 20th centuries. And these courses engage the city's deep and often very conflicted history through site visits, walks, and seminars. We also have courses that sort of take a step back and look at urbanism more broadly and in a global context. So that would be multiple modernities and also representation of cities. And both of these courses look at cities and their representations across the global north and south. We have several courses that very deeply engage with new bodies of philosophical and critical theory. So materialist ecological architecture engages the work of feminist materialists to look at new technologies and the environment. And then the history and theory of digital design, the bottom one on the list there, attempts to map this constantly evolving world of digital design, computation, and AI, and think about how those issues affect architecture. And then finally, we have courses that really push the boundaries of critical and creative practice, including practices of criticism, which explores the production and writing of architectural criticism, and then critical spatial practice, site writing, that explores creative and situated writing practices and looks at voice and other textual strategies in the production of writing. So there really is something for everyone to do, and we would argue that this range and also the quality of our optional modules is one of our greatest strengths.
Great. And then just to tell you a little bit about the other things that happen across the year. So there's a final symposium, which is an event that the graduating students organize alongside us as collaborators. And it's a chance for students to present their work in a public forum. So it's an open invitation symposium, and that includes invited speakers that talk alongside the students. It's a very, very nice kind of closing event for the year. And then there's,
Sorry,
yes,
can I add one thing?
please do.
It's very well attended. So there's between 80 to 100 people who come. It's a great chance to meet other students and mix and mingle. The 2 years tend to come together. So it's quite an exciting event.
Yeah. And we run a lecture series throughout the year called Situating Architecture. So we have approximately 6 or 7 lectures across the 2 terms, from invited speakers outside the Bartlett internationally recognized scholars, through to some of our own colleagues. So that's a quite diverse program across the year. And we have a careers workshop in term 3, which invites alumni from the course to come and talk about their experiences in work. And we also chip in as staff about how to move into that next phase of work. And then there's also a field trip. So this happens in term 3. And I just wanted to show you some pictures from last year's trip to Edinburgh. But you can see that we've been on a number of field trips. It's something that we started within the last 8 years or so, since Peg Rawls took over the directorship. But we've been to quite a few places. But recently we went to Edinburgh, and typically what we try to do is to see a range of aspects of the city, from historic sites through to more modern sites. For instance, here we went to southern parts of Edinburgh to see the Fountain Bridge Library, which is an Art Deco library. We went to the Edinburgh Printmaker Centre, which is a converted industrial building. And we went to the Scottish Widows building, which is a kind of brutalist building, which is now abandoned. So a kind of diverse survey of the city. We visit people. We go to see sort of members of staff from parallel courses, and here we went to visit an artist who's in the studios of the Edinburgh School of Architecture, and had a talk from her. It's Crystal Bennis. And we also visited the port of Leith, where we had a visit by an ex-alumni from the M Arch program at the Bartlett, who's working as an architect, Kieran Hawkins, where we went to visit some of the modern housing of the port zone of Edinburgh. You can just see some of the tower blocks in the distance. And that, just as a kind of another taster, was a visit to Greece, and we had the whole of the top floor as our breakfast room with a view onto the Acropolis, which was rather nice.
Excellent.
I think that's it.
Yes. So that is it from us. And we thought at this point we'd turn over to Sophie and to Rodney to say a few words and answer any questions you may have.
Stop share.
Oh, yes. Yeah. We'll stop sharing.
Hi, everyone.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm Sophie, and I'm one of the students on the course at the minute, and Rodney's here as well.
Yes, hello, I'm Rodney.
Rodney, do you want to talk a bit about your journey up to this course and your undergrad and stuff, and then I can go as well.
Okay, sure. So I'm from the United States, America. I did my undergrad in architecture, and then I also got a minor in architectural history and theory, as well as sustainable design, because why not? So once I graduated, towards the end of my undergrad, I realized that I was very interested in pursuing history and theory further. So I started looking to apply to grad schools, and that's what led me to the Bartlett, because I wanted to get out of Oklahoma, which is where I'm from. So why not go as far as possible to London? I applied, and then I got in, and now I'm here. So it was definitely a process, but it's just time. If you can put the time into it, then it's not necessarily difficult. So
Thanks.
I guess I can talk a bit about my experience as someone from the UK as well, and my journey up until this course. So, as I said, my name's Sophie. I completed my undergraduate at the University of Edinburgh just this summer, and my undergraduate was in architectural history with history of art. So I had some kind of direct contact with architectural history before doing this course at the Bartlett. But what I enjoy about the course and what I found is that the other students in the course have very kind of diverse backgrounds in terms of what they had done before. You know, you have people like myself and Rodney who have maybe come directly from a university experience, but there's also people who have decided to do this course further in their career, something that they're interested in, and and just want to pursue it as kind of more of an interest-based subject. But the other thing that I've found particularly striking about the course is that you don't need to have a background in architectural history. I think I'm one of the only 2 people this year who have done architectural history in kind of like a formal education setting. But we have a whole range of students. We have architects, we have people who did English literature, we have archaeology. It's just really diverse. So I guess what I would want to say is, if you're worried that you don't have any kind of direct experience in the field, it doesn't matter. As long as you're interested, that's your kind of ticket to it. But yeah, so I'm I guess a home student. I did my undergraduate also in the UK, and I have some familiarity with the processes of application. But what I will say is that the Bartlett application was rigorous in a sense. You know, you have an interview, you submit a writing sample, but that isn't really anything to worry about. If you're passionate about the subject, then that will shine through. So yeah.
Thank you. Should we open up to some questions? So we've got a question: are there more courses related to the South Asian art history, architecture, and anthropology? Yes, I mean the module. I mean, firstly, there are texts that deal with kind of post-colonial histories and theory, and the module, the term 2 module, multiple modernities, is a kind of specialist module in that. Less to do with art history, certainly, you know, to do with a kind of anthropological gaze, and multiple modernities deals with subaltern studies, for example, and any other modules that deal with that. I mean, the decolonizing project is present on all aspects of the course, so that there are texts that relate to that broader study of you know, cross-cultural, transcultural dialogues across the program.
And there is certainly scope in the dissertation to develop this subject, obviously working with a tutor. We have several tutors who would be very well qualified and who could help you to develop a subject. I'm immediately thinking of Tanya Sengupta, but because we can draw on this very broad pool of staff members, we do have very good coverage, and many staff have different areas of expertise that we can draw upon. So I feel we don't cover everything. I wouldn't want to promise that, but I think we've got very broad coverage, and that is that would extend globally. Desart, did you want to pose some questions to the students?
Yes, I would be very happy to do that, but I think in the
Thank
meantime,
you.
we've got a question that's come in the chat. So if you want to begin with that.
Do we have a biblical historical architecture program? I'm not sure what that means, to be perfectly honest, which maybe answers the question. I'm not sure. If you could elaborate on what you mean, that would help. I should say, though, perhaps that we do tend to focus on the modern. We do interpret that quite broadly. We don't mean modernism per se, but I would say we certainly focus more on, say, 1750 to present. And insofar as we've got a concentration, it is on that period. So perhaps biblical extends outside of that time frame.
Does the department offer anything beyond the classroom, such as events or networking? I mean, we do. I mean, in fact, this year we've begun a kind of more experimental collaboration with other MAs. We work within a kind of cluster structure, which is with the MA Situated Practice and the MA Historic Urban Environments. At the moment, that the events are based on the Situating Architecture program, which will extend into next year, when there'll also be there's a workshop planned that's open to all students, that's hosted by the MASP MA. And you know, there's the possibility of joining lectures and events, you know, college-based lectures and events. There's the Crash lecture series, and there's the I'm not sure if there's an international program of lectures running at the moment, but there often is a kind of school-wide international lecture as well. But you know, there are constant events based on the program of exhibitions as outputs for students on the undergraduate and graduate programs. And it's, you know, it's a lively center. There are many events going on which people can dip into when they have time to. Yes.
Could we actually maybe ask Sophie or Rodney to say something about perhaps the sorts of things that you do outside of the classroom, and how have you made use of London, and how have you found that experience?
Yeah, for sure. I have a few things that come to mind immediately, actually. So firstly, related to the course, kind of more directly, in research and dissemination, we've had the chance to hear from guest speakers, as Robin has explained, and people who are connected to the course in ways, but also very much have their own kind of thing going on. And what I've really enjoyed about that is that those people are then a kind of connection for you that you can email or get in touch with, and they'll know who you are because they have spoken to you in the session. So for example, I had some follow-up questions for Vicky, who's the head of architecture at the Royal Academy. I sent her an email and she knew exactly who I was. And so that was a really kind of nice way to reach out and make a connection. And that is a kind of thing that can continue outside of the classroom. Another thing that I'll say, just kind of on a wider picture about London in general, and I assume some of you who are attending this session are considering moving to London for the course and aren't all from London. London is an extremely kind of there's so much going on, basically, is what I'll say. The Royal Academy, they have a whole series of lectures, events, panels, exhibitions, tons of stuff. I mean, London, like, you'll never run out of things to do. And then in terms of kind of more a social thing, I think, I mean, I'm not sure how it was in previous years, but I think our year group, we've kind of gelled really well. Rodney may agree. And something that we like to do, and for whoever's available or wants to, is that we do the pub quiz, the uni pub quiz every Wednesday together as a group. And like, for whoever can join, whoever can't join, it's, yeah, but it seems to be like a bit of a rolling thing on the Wednesdays. So even, you know, just the kind of nature of meeting people on the course, it opens up a bunch of possibilities for connections and friendships, and I really love that aspect.
Yeah, just add on that is there's also the lectures and seminars that the school itself offers outside of the classes, which are really interesting. We had one just last week or 2 weeks ago on using queer practices to understand and address climate change, which is really interesting. So there's all these kind of related fields going around as well that you can participate in, not just within the architectural history course. And then, yeah, just as Sophie was saying, we've all gelled very well, and you know, we'll go get drinks after class and get lunch after class and hang out, and random times of the week people will just message each other and be like, hey, we're gonna go do this, do people want to come? It's very fun and communal, and I enjoy it a lot. So
Yeah, it's super nice. That aspect is really, really lovely.
It's nice for us as well, because we get to sort of dip in and out. It's quite friendly, which is, I think, and that's always been the case. So it's great that you're experiencing that as well.
So next question is, how many hours a week do the classes take up, and how large is the cohort? The cohort is anywhere between sort of 20 to 28. And there are also part-time students who might be dipping into different modules at a different pace, and not present in all classes. And then in the term 2 modules, because you're choosing between 8 different modules, the classes might range from 6 up to 20. So it's quite dynamic there. And then in terms of contact hours, typically the critical methodologies is a 3-hour session, and then research and dissemination can be a morning and an afternoon session, or just a morning session. And then in term 2, it's the same kind of dynamic, with at least 2 sessions per week. Sometimes students audit a 3rd module if they feel they have time. So that, and then into term 3, it's the individual tutoring.
And can I just ask Sophie and Rodney, and please be candid, but how much time do you spend preparing for the classes? Have you found it to be consistent, or some weeks is more than others? What is the range?
yeah, so for critical methodologies, there's quite a bit of reading that you do to prepare for the class, and the class is also on Monday, which isn't the most fun day to have to spend preparing all of this reading for, but you get it done nonetheless. I find that it takes me about 2 days, not the entire day, but you know, I'll set about 3 or 4 hours one day, 3 or 4 hours the next day to get done all of the reading. And that seems to be pretty standard. There was one week that we had like only 3 readings, and I was able to get all of the readings done in about 3 or 4 hours, which was nice. But typically it's about 8 hours a week.
Wow.
So a working day. You spend a working day approximately a week reading on my end, at least. And the readings are definitely intended to challenge you. So, you're not just reading them, you're thinking about them, you're making notes, you're highlighting things, stuff like that. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm a super slow reader, to be honest. And the nature of critical methodologies, as Rodney says, the texts are challenging. So I feel like it takes me extra time to kind of read and process. And because we go into the class on a Monday, having done these readings and preparing to talk about the readings, I found that it's really important to get kind of a solid understanding of actually what is going on in these texts. So yeah, as Rodney says, it's not just a case of reading and closing the book or shutting your laptop. It's very much like an active process. So although on paper, kind of being in uni only 2 days a week doesn't seem like that much, it's a lot more than that. Equally, the way that we've been assessed in research and dissemination, we have kind of more regular assessments throughout the term versus kind of one big essay at the end of the term, like critical methodologies has been. So what I've found is actually the weeks get filled up quite fast because you're maybe working on an assignment that you have 2 weeks to do, and you're working with a group on that, but then you also have to do your readings. So it's not just a case of like, okay, I'm in uni Monday, Thursday, I'm doing my readings on a Sunday. It's like, actually, okay, we have a group project to work on a Tuesday and Wednesday, and then I also need to make time to do, I don't know, like a site visit if I want, or something like that. So actually, it's pretty busy, and you can definitely fill your time up as much as you want. There's always secondary readings that are given to us as well for the critical methodologies sessions. But yeah, the week does get busy quite fast. That's what I'll say.
yes. But just don't stress out about the extra assignments with research and dissemination, because we've only had 2 so far, and we've just started the 3rd one. So it's not like every week is going to be fully
No.
booked. We've had 3 weeks so far that have been like, oh, okay, this is pretty busy. I have a lot of stuff to do. But
Yeah.
the term is 12 weeks, I believe.
Yeah.
So 4 busy weeks out of the entire course term isn't a ton.
No,
Fortunately.
it's very manageable. It's very
There's plenty
manageable.
of opportunity for hobbies and doing the things you want to do, going to museums, going to shops, all that, whatever you choose to fill your time with.
Yeah.
So.
Sounds like I might have to increase the workload.
Oh.
It's not.
Okay, thank you. We've got a few other questions that have come through. One is asking about this program versus the MA in situated practice. How does it compare to the MA architectural history program? To be honest, I can't really speak to that in depth.
No, I mean,
we share some modules with the course, but sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when we share the site writing module, which is the kind of core methodology of situated practice, and that one is really driven by site-based investigations, and it's there are certainly theorized components, there's certainly reading, but it's also driven by a kind of practice-led approach. And it's a very interdisciplinary practice, spatial practice in the broader sense that covers art, architecture, literary techniques, and it's really grown out of Jane Rendell's interests in a kind of situated practice, identity, site, and the generation of situated knowledge. And so that one is tutored by, it's normally led by James O'Leary. It's currently being led by Polly Gould, whilst James is on sabbatical, and another core tutor on that is David Roberts. So they're all very experienced in this kind of crossover between art and architecture, and kind of very site-based, community-based investigative methods through spatial practice.
Yeah. So essentially, I think the key difference is that MASP is more focused on creative practice and hands-on investigative projects, as Robin said. Whereas there is scope for that within our course, but it isn't the primary focus. And you do have to opt in to a more creatively based way of working. So we don't disallow it, but it isn't the primary mode. So. Okay, we have a couple of other questions that have come through. What kind of writing sample is expected?
Yeah, I mean, the writing sample can just be, it doesn't have to be too long. I mean, it's really just to kind of get a sense of the kind of writing, the kind of methods you might have used previously. So it can be an extract from an undergraduate dissertation, or it can be a kind of short article that you submitted for publication. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be too long. I mean, and it's also seen in conjunction with the personal statement, and it might be something that allows us to discuss with you in the interview. So it might be a topic that you're particularly kind of comfortable in discussing in the interview that you might want to kind of introduce through that essay. Does that answer the question?
I think that sounds good. We are now suddenly getting a rush of questions. How many people applied to the course?
Probably about 80, I would say.
Yes. So it is competitive, but I would say it's also quite open in that, as Sophie very helpfully said, we don't expect students to all look one way. We take students from a very broad range of disciplines, cultures, career stage. So our student body tends to be more diverse than the average student body. And that's quite an important feature of the course that we try to cultivate through admissions.
So next one is, what are the typical pathways students follow after graduating? It's reasonably diverse. I mean, there are students who've come from architecture practice and might go back into practice. There are students who go on to work in journalism, in curatorship. The RIVA Journal is currently has its chief editor, who's an ex-alumni from some time back, and one of the assistant editors is also a more recent alumni. What else? And yeah, often people go into architectural heritage, and sometimes people go into that pathway through volunteering for the 20th Century Society, for example, and then moving on to more, into it as a profession. We have 3 alumni who are currently working for Foster's in their communications teams. So that's quite an interesting recent development, but they're making quite an interesting impact on the kind of culture of research, in fact, at Foster's. So it's quite broad, but in a way, sort of spheres that you'd expect. But with a lot of success, actually, and people, really sort of shaping many institutions through the type of pedagogy that they receive on the course. And then there's a second part to that one. And in terms of dissertation, how long is it? Does it usually follow a line of research identified in the option modules, or could it be on research question from elsewhere? The dissertation is 10,000 words. And the option modules are often a generator for key questions, and you might choose to work with a tutor that you worked with on the option modules. I think that people often hold back on committing to a topic until they've done those modules, and I think that's very important. But of course, it's you might come to the masters with a project that you really want to address, and so you might learn through the modules methodologies that could contribute to asking that question differently or from different perspectives.
Yes, that's true. Although the other day, a student did tell me she already had her subject lined up and ready to go. So as Robin says, some students do come with a very clear project in mind. Others work it out as they go along and take their, the term 1 and the term 2 modules. So it really varies greatly. And then finally, we have a question about, is there a focus on visualization and diagramming as a means of research expression, or are the courses more focused on merely writing?
Yeah.
Also mapping.
I mean, in terms of visualization, I mean, there's the the importance of representation as an issue within historiography and criticism, from architectural photography through to understanding many different forms of production as a kind of representation, including different modes of writing in a sense. In terms of diagramming, mapping, I mean, it depends in a sense on the tutor. I mean, I think someone like Murray Fraser, who contributes as a tutor in the dissertation, he's very keen on diagramming as a kind of as a component in how you understand and generate research in relation to buildings and typologies. And mapping. Well, I mean, I think also, within the digital history of digital design, I mean, these ideas are current as well, but they're not core to the course. They're something you might bring into the course as a concern, and find ways to connect them to some of the kind of core methodologies that we have, but those are perhaps techniques that are kind of more specialized to other masters.
Yes. But certainly there is a real interest in representation, and people study that in many ways, including through film. That's the one thing we haven't mentioned thus far, but it is several of the modules engage film in depth, ethnographic film, but also commercial film, Hollywood film, and so that is also part of the repertoire.
Right. So one final question about application process. The application doesn't currently ask for a writing sample, just a personal statement. Is the sample something that's requested later? Yeah, I think you actually get a, once your application has advanced to a certain stage, you then get a prompt to submit an extra piece of writing. I think that's right, Sophie and Rodney. Yeah.
Sorry, do you mind just repeating that one more time, Robin? My
Yeah,
connection.
yeah. So at some point in the application process, you get prompted by Central UCL to submit a writing sample.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you want to, I know we're sort of winding up, but could you maybe just say something quickly about your writing sample and how you chose it?
Yeah, I think I submitted an essay that I had done just as part of my final year in my undergraduate degree, and it was on I now looking back at it, I'm not entirely sure why I decided to submit this one, but it was about structural engineering and kind of like the history of structural engineering in relation to architectural history. I think it was something that I had done quite well on and was proud of. But actually, it didn't really have anything to do with the things that I had highlighted in my personal statement. So in my personal statement, I kind of put emphasis on my dissertation, which looked at modernism in the United Arab Emirates, and then also the work that I had done as part of a placement with the National Trust for Scotland. So a bunch of kind of random things here, but I think that's the scope and the kind of broadness of my application. I think actually aligns with what the Bartlett fosters, which is this idea of a broadness across the discipline and not discriminating against kind of niches, I guess. But yeah, so I submitted an essay in its entirety, which I think was 3,000 words, so definitely not a sample. And I'm sorry, Robin, now in hindsight. But yeah, I was told that just a sample, an extract is fine. So yeah.
Great. And Rodney, what was yours?
I had to go and find it because I could not remember. So my writing sample was from an architectural ethics course I took in my undergrad. It was an essay I had written on preservation and looked at it was looking at demolition and preservation and questioning exactly my brain is completely broken at the moment. Oh my God. It was looking at questioning why we preserve things and making sure that if we're going to destroy something, we understand not just what's going to be put in place, but what could have been retained if we had originally kept the building there. That was a very bad explanation, but that was the gist of it. Which is, as I understand, a somewhat non-popular opinion in the architecture world. So that was why I chose it, honestly. It's because I knew a lot of my peers did not like my opinion on the essay. So I was like, I'm gonna submit this.
Yeah, no, it's a good strategy. I think the point is that the subject doesn't matter. What we want to see is that you have a position, you're able to express opinions, you have a voice. That's probably the most important thing
Absolutely.
to us. And it doesn't have to be formal. It can be a journal article or something more. It can be a manifesto. That would be fine with us. But if that's any help in terms of thinking of the sample and how you choose what to submit.
Yeah. I would just recommend that it's important that if you've come from a design, more of a design background, that it's not more of a design thesis. Sometimes we have submissions that comprise a short amount of text and quite a lot of portfolio images, and so that's really not applicable to this course. It needs to be to demonstrate that you're committed to writing as a medium. But as I say, it doesn't have to be too long. It's really, to help generate a conversation within the interview as well, which allows you to craft that conversation through something you'd really want to talk about.
Great. Okay, we have run through the questions and we've run out of time. So yes. Okay, so I think, Desart, shall we end the call? Can we thank Sophie? thank Rodney. It was incredibly helpful to have you here. Yes, and thank you all for coming, and we hope some of you decide to take the plunge, and we might see you next year.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.